Okay, I want you to think about whether any of these situations sound familiar. Maybe you're at home with your kids, and of course you love them, you really do. But lately, being home during the summer, they're here all day, and there's wrappers everywhere, shoes everywhere, kids tracking in grass or water from their water fight or whatever is going on today. And things are just a little more hectic, and being home with them has started to feel really suffocating, irritating, like your life has gotten very small. And yet you don't know how to want more without feeling guilty about it, without resenting your kids for keeping you stuck. Or maybe you said yes to helping out a friend just for the week, and somehow that week turned into more. And now every time you see their name on your phone, something in you starts to seethe, and you feel it right in your gut, and you're annoyed, you're irritated. Or maybe you're the nurse who always picks up the shifts, always. And while you're working, you watch your coworkers book their vacations, and you can feel something turning in you that you don't really want to look at. If you recognize yourself in any of those situations, this episode is for you, because what all three of those situations have in common isn't bad luck. It isn't that you're dealing with hard people. But what it is an unspoken need that never got voiced or a boundary that never got drawn. Today, we are talking all about resentment and how to untangle it and manage it. Welcome to Burnout Solutions. My name is Mona Tippett. I am a registered nurse, a life coach, an emotional resiliency expert, and a mom. I love to help healthcare workers and caretakers and just busy, capable people understand their brain and nervous system so stress, overwhelm, and frustration do not run their life. Here on this podcast, we break down burnout, emotional overload, and survival patterns in simple human language. I love to give you practical ways to feel safer, calmer, and more present in your everyday life. You do not need fixing. What you need is support and a nervous system that knows that it's safe. Thanks for being here. Hello and welcome back to Burnout Solutions. It is summer, my window's open, so you might hear the birds singing, but it is a beautiful day here in Boise, Idaho, and I am so glad that you are here. Let's just jump on in, because if you've listened to my little intro, you know that we're talking about resentment. And resentment, I think, is one of those things that we throw that word around without really fully understanding what we are dealing with. Here is what it often looks like. It's when somebody asks you to take on one more thing and your mouth says, yes, of course, no problem. But maybe you spend the next 3 days quietly seething, wondering, why did I agree to this? And maybe if you have listened to this podcast or you pay attention, you can feel what your body is saying, and it's saying absolutely no. Don't say yes. Your stomach is tight, your jaw clenches, you have a scowl on your face, and you have an underlying annoyance, and you're annoyed with everyone in a 5-foot radius around you, right? And you're annoyed at yourself. And this is resentment. And for me, I feel it tight in my chest. It's like a hot coal that won't cool down. And I actually have become very, very good at paying attention to this. And I can't actually remember the last time I felt resentment. We'll get into that later. But what's interesting is when you are in that moment, it often feels completely about the other person. If that other person would do more, if they would ask less, if they would notice what you're doing, if they were grateful, if they did not take you or other things in their life for granted, then you would feel better and life would be better, right? I used to totally believe that thought and that way of thinking. I used to think resentment meant that other people had done something wrong, that they had crossed a line or taken advantage of me or whatever. And sometimes, yes, that's true. But what I've come to understand through my own life and through the life coaching that I've been doing is more often than not, resentment isn't actually about the other person. It's information about us, about what we needed and we didn't say, about something we agreed to but we didn't want to, about a boundary that we never set, or if we set a boundary, we didn't hold it. So today we are going to look at resentment, not as a weapon that we point at other people and blame other people, but as a mirror that we can use to point back at ourselves. And I want to be really clear about this. We're not blaming, not other people, not ourselves. Today, we are just getting curious and saying, I wonder why I feel that way. I wonder what they are doing. I wonder what I am doing and where I can have control in this situation to make it different. Because I truly believe this. I said this probably about 5 times this week to 5 different people. I believe that all problems are thought problems. And when we can get curious about our thoughts and our feelings, and today about resentment, instead of just feeling it and being upset by it, then we have some real power over it to see how can I change this feeling inside me. So let's just actually start talking about what resentment actually is, because I really love this definition. I own and love Brené Brown's book, Atlas of the Heart. I use it a lot in my coaching. It is like an encyclopedia for emotions, and I just love it. Anyway, she defines resentment as the feeling of frustration, judgment, anger, better than, and or hidden envy related to perceived unfairness or injustice. It's an emotion that we often experience when we fail to set boundaries or ask for what we need, or when expectations let us down because they were based on things we can't control, like what other people think, feel, or how they're going to react. What sticks out most to me in that definition is this: resentment is often what happens when we have forgotten how to take care of ourselves. When we could ask, what do I need? But for whatever reason, we are afraid to do that. She also says something that I found really funny and really true. She says that she recognizes resentment in herself by a thought pattern that sounds like, what mean and critical thing am I rehearsing to say to this person, right? Those are the thoughts that we're spiraling. Next time I'm going to tell her this, or I would love to say this, but in reality, we don't dare to say that. And we talk about what we want to say to other people, et cetera, because I find that when you're in a spiral of, I wish I could say this to her, which are usually mean and hurtful, and you really wouldn't say that, but that's your nervous system really trying to protect you from the actions of that other person, but it's actually your nervous system hurt in protection mode, building its case, gathering evidence of what that other person has done wrong to make you feel this way. But again, resentment is what happens when we don't set the boundary, when we don't ask for what we need, when we keep our mouth shut and our expectations silent. Then we feel betrayed. Then we feel trampled on. We feel underappreciated because those unspoken expectations did not get met. And I went to a PTA conference in April, and we talked about talking to teachers and how to approach them in a professional way as a parent or as, a PTA, and how if we do not let our concerns be voiced, we can't really expect somebody else to change because they don't know that what they're doing is wrong. I mean, maybe it's obvious to you what they're doing wrong, but if we don't say something, then that's on us. And for me, right? If I'm doing something and it's bothering somebody and they don't approach it, I don't know that I need to change. So think of it that way. Like, we need to communicate in a kind way to other people where we feel things need to change. I also loved that Brené Brown is really honest about her own practice. And when she notices resentment, instead of asking, what is this person doing wrong? What should they be doing differently? She asks herself, what do I need, but I am afraid to ask for? And I want you to think of that a lot. When you feel that resentment, just sit with that question. It's not comfortable and it takes courage, but really ask yourself, what do I need, but I am afraid to ask for? It requires us to stop focusing outward, to stop cataloging and taking note and gathering evidence, what the other person did or didn't do, and turn the lens back onto ourselves. It requires a lot of honesty. It requires a lot of humility. It requires vulnerability. And For the nurses and teachers and parents and the people that I work with who have built their entire identity around being capable, dependable, low maintenance, agreeable, that question can feel really threatening, right? Because as high achievers, it is sometimes hard asking what you need because why? It makes us admit that we have needs, which can be difficult because we, again, are the helpers. And when we have needs, we are admitting that we are not okay doing everything for everyone else all the time. And somewhere along the way, often a lot of us got the message that having needs was a problem. So before we go any further, I want you to just remember this, that resentment is not a character flaw. It is not proof that you are being difficult, that you are ungrateful, that you are too sensitive, that you are stuck on other people and their fatal flaws, right? But what resentment is a signal that your nervous system and your emotional body are telling you that something is out of alignment with yourself, with your core values, and something needs attention. So let's just go into that nervous system piece just a little bit, because this is where it all clicks for me, right? The nervous system is behind all of human behavior. So when you don't voice a need, it just doesn't disappear. It doesn't evaporate. Your body keeps score. And through the lens of polyvagal theory, our nervous system is constantly scanning our environment for safety or threat. It does this automatically, right? Through all of our five senses. This is happening below the level of conscious thought. We don't really have control over it. This is something that just happens. And when you consistently suppress those needs, when you keep smiling and saying, oh yeah, that's totally fine, no problem, when there absolutely is a problem, your nervous system registers that as a low-grade threat, right? This is not dramatic. It's not, I need to run away immediately from a predator, but this is a slow, persistent, a quiet signal that it's not safe to talk about this and that your needs are not safe to voice. And over time, that signal accumulates. And I love how Deb Dana describes it. Your nervous system starts to live in a mobilized state. You are having some sympathetic activation, the urge to do something, right? You're climbing up that curve, but there's no clear outlet. You're not fully in fight or flight yet, but you're not in safety either. And that constant low-grade chronic tension, that zone that you're in is where I see a lot of resentment brew and fester and grow and expand. It's not often an explosion, except when something comes and it's the straw that breaks the camel's back. But again, slow, simmering, it's rumination. It's that thing in your chest that you can't quite let go of. Now, the reason it's so hard to shake, again, is because you are dealing with your biology. Your nervous system is keeping score every time you swallowed your need, every time you nodded and wanted to say no, every time you took that extra shift, every time you said yes to the neighbor, anytime you said yes to, whatever you did that helped often absorb somebody else's stress, but we forgot to process our own or evaluate, is this worth the cost that it's going to take for me. And you can say yes and you can live intentionally, but in resentment, you feel like a victim to somebody else. You feel like a victim to their asking and taking advantage of you, right? You've changed that nice thing that you're wanting to do because really, I do believe people do want to serve and help, and it starts there, but the boundary again has not been made. It has not been evaluated or held. And what I have seen with healthcare workers and teachers and caregivers is that these professions do attract these highly capable, often over-functioning people who are, you're deeply empathetic, you genuinely want to help, and you have enormous capacity to absorb other people's emotional weight. That's a really great character. That's a really beautiful thing, but it's also a setup. Because often when self-sacrifice is baked into your professional identity, the idea of pausing to say, okay, wait, I need something here. I'm not really willing to do that right now, can feel impossible. Sometimes even dangerous. So you just keep going and you're not saying anything. And that's when the resentment starts to build until, one time that small thing sets you off and everyone around you is confused because your reaction doesn't match the moment. But it absolutely does match the accumulation and all that stored stress that has been simmering. So the first step, of course, is awareness. So just be aware that maybe you are stuck in this resentment cycle. But let's move on. So the next part is maybe the most important, but can honestly be the hardest. So just hold on with me. Resentment is often self-blame in disguise. When we resent somebody, what we're usually really doing is redirecting towards them something that we feel towards ourselves. The frustration, the judgment, the anger, because it genuinely is painful to look inward and say, I allowed this. I kept saying yes. I never spoke up. I'm frustrated with myself for not holding the boundary. I'm judging myself for getting walked all over. I chose the silence over being honest over and over and over again. And now I'm here and I don't know how to stop the cycle. And that is really, really hard to hold yourself accountable for. So what our brain does instead is it builds a case against the other person and their actions. We catalog their failures, how ungrateful and inconsiderate they are. We keep track of every piece of evidence for why they're the problem. And for a little while, it does bring some relief, that's not my problem, it's theirs, except you're the one that's stuck living with the feeling. And somewhere you need to put that discomfort, and you can't keep blaming it on somebody else because that feeling is within you. And it doesn't resolve anything because, again, we can't change other people, but we can change ourselves. Brené Brown talks about this in The Gift of Imperfection, another great book that I own of hers. And she says that when we fail to set boundaries and hold people accountable, we end up feeling used and mistreated. And we start attacking who someone is rather than addressing a specific behavior. We skip honest conversation and go straight to contempt. She also says something that I have thought about a ton since I've read her book the first time. And she talks about herself and what she learned through all of her research that she's done. She said, before this research, I was sweeter on the outside, but judgmental, resentful, and angry on the inside. Today, I think I am genuinely more compassionate, less judgmental, less resentful, and more serious about boundaries, which I love. I love that she could see that change in herself. And I totally agree that a lot of us are like that, right? We're really nice and smiley on the outside, but seething on the inside. Anyway, I just love that she shared her journey from performing kindness to actually having it, from faking ease and contentment to genuinely having that inward peace, because you're not carrying a mountain of unspoken words and uncrossed lines and those boundaries that have been tromped all over, and that resentment underneath the surface is gone when we can hold that boundary. So let's talk about, why don't we just say something? Because if resentment is about an unspoken need or a boundary that hasn't been set, the obvious question is, why don't you say something? And I ask my clients this all the time. I sometimes like to put them on the spot. Why don't you just have the conversation? Usually there's a pause and they say, I don't know, but they do know. And you can feel the thing you're not saying. You agreed to something you didn't want to, but why do we keep doing it? Okay, well, I think there's 3 main reasons that I see. The first, of course, is your nervous system. It feels dangerous to your nervous system to speak up. We stay silent because somewhere in our blueprint, either from our family of origin, our professional environment, our current relationship, with them, with other people, we learned that speaking up had a consequence. We learned that conflict was dangerous. We learned that expressing a need would result in getting yelled at, a punishment, or maybe we would be seen as difficult or not a helpful person. And even when that is not true, or even no longer true, the nervous system remembers that, and it carries that into every situation. It remembers things that your brain has long since moved past, but the threat response was activated and it keeps a record of it. And so remember, our nervous system and brain love to bring the past and morph it into the current situation, and it taints it. So when it comes time to say something honest, your nervous system says, nope, we're not doing that. We've learned in the past that it's dangerous and we're not going to. And your logical brain doesn't even get a chance to weigh in. And again, you're hijacked by that emotional limbic area of your brain. The second reason is, I have seen this so many times, is I believe so many of us genuinely don't deserve to have needs, or we don't realize that we do, or we don't want to admit that we do, right? I talked about this a little bit, and I see this especially in healthcare and caregiving cultures. Your entire identity is built around serving others. And sometimes that has been an adaptation. You learned a way of keeping peace that started really, really early in your life, and you were an adult as a child. You were trained to prioritize everybody else, and that pattern just keeps on going. Now the idea of saying, hey, wait a second, I need something here, can feel embarrassing, maybe even pathetic, like you're betraying who you're supposed to be. But that belief, the one that says having needs makes you weak or burdensome, is not a fact. It is just a story that you've been carrying around, and it absolutely is worth examining and, I believe, rewiring and letting go of. Okay, the third is kind of like the first, is we are afraid of what will happen after we say it. In a relationship, we are in a dance. And I use this metaphor with my clients a lot. I know my dance steps, you know your dance steps, and we've been doing this choreography for a long time. And when I change my dance, and when I finally set that boundary or say that thing that I've been holding against you, the other person often pushes back. They might not believe you, they might pressure you, they might act hurt or confused. And we know this is likely to happen. We don't want to hurt their feelings. It's fine. It's not that big of a deal. And so we stay silent because we just think it's not worth it. But what I want to offer is, when the dance is disruptive, that disruption is necessary for anything to actually change. And people can learn new dance steps, or they decide they don't want to do the dance anymore. And either way, you get clarity. Either way, you have the opportunity to have a discussion, to come to common ground, to understand each other and their sides. And things have the opportunity to get better. One more thing I do want to say here is, when we have spent years suppressing our needs, we often lose touch with what those needs even are. And I see this so often, especially with women. And I'll ask them, okay, well, what do you want? And they don't even know. They know what they want their kids to do and be happy. They know they want their spouse to be happy. They know they want their environment fixed so they can feel better. But they have lost access to their own brain and their own desires of what they actually want. Now, if that is you, I want you to know that you are not permanently lost. You have just gotten really, really, really good at overriding yourself and your desires and your needs. And the great news is that can be unlearned. And this is exactly what I do with my clients. I help you reconnect to your own internal knowing. I help you rebuild trust with yourself. And I help you take small, believable steps personally for you and how you can do that. So let's just move into some practical steps of what you can do, because again, you can learn a lot of things and still not change anything. When we change, we are actually changing the experience that we have by practicing what we learn. So next time you notice that slow simmering burn of resentment, I want you to use these 3 questions. You can journal them, you can sit with them quietly, or you can even book a free call with me and we'll go through them together. But I really do want you to actually learn them. So the first question is, what did I need that I didn't ask for? This is Brené Brown's question. It's the foundation. Before you inventory what the other person did or said or should have noticed, just get quiet and honest. What were you actually needing in that situation? More rest, more recognition, more support? Did you need to be heard? Did you need your own time with your own people? Did you need your limits respected? Just get really specific. Question 2, what did I agree to that I actually didn't want to agree to? And why did I agree to that? I want you to trace back to the moment that you said yes when you actually meant no. What were you afraid would happen if you said the honest thing? And I think this is such deep work and so good for you to look at. This isn't to beat yourself up, to find out ways of why you feel like a doormat. It's to understand a pattern that you might have, especially with this person or this situation, so you can interrupt it the next time. Okay, question 3 is there a conversation I've been avoiding that needs to happen? Not every instance of resentment requires confrontation, but some of it requires a conversation. And when you have that conversation, remember, you're not bringing up every single thing they've ever done in their whole entire life. This isn't to attack them. You're being clear, honest, kind, using candor. You're using I statements. You're speaking from your own experience. Here's what I need. Here is what isn't working for me right now. And yes, maybe some of you are thinking, what if that doesn't go well? What if they react really badly? What if they start yelling? What if our friendship is ruined over this? Okay, that absolutely is possible. Because remember, changing the dance almost always involves some sort of turbulence. But I want you to consider the alternative. What does it cost you to not say anything? I mean, that's not really even a true, authentic relationship. Also, what does it cost your health, your sleep, your nervous system, your sense of identity, your relationships, right? What benefit do you have to keep carrying this? Because that all has a huge real cost too. Maybe it's just quieter and it often goes unexamined. But I really do believe resentment, when left unaddressed, doesn't stay still. It grows. And it seeps into how you show up for yourself, how you show up for your kids, for your patients, for your students, for the neighbors. It distances you from the people that you actually love and you want to help and you want to invest in those relationships because you're tired from carrying it around. And here's the thing that I find so interesting is we are rarely resentful towards strangers, right? It's almost always the people we are in a repeated relationship with. These are the people that we do care about, and resentment can slowly erode that foundation of that relationship. So think about it. I want to share this reframe. You can choose to be kind, to pick up the shift, to help the neighbor, to do all of it. You absolutely can. But let go of other people's reactions as the reason you're doing it. Ask yourself, who do I want to be right now? I ask that question to my clients all the time. If the answer is, I want to be someone who genuinely helps, then help. If not, then don't. And release all the guilt along with that decision. Okay, so let's just wrap up and close. Here's what I want to take with you, that resentment is not a flaw in your character. It's not proof that you're sensitive, too emotional, or too much. It is a signal. It is a message from part of you that knows what you need, even when you haven't found the words or the courage to say it yet. Resentment also means that there's still a part of you that cares about your own well-being. And that's great. That is huge. Because if you didn't care about yourself, it wouldn't be bothering you. So let's listen to that part. Let's listen to that little tiny part that wants to advocate for yourself, because it deserves to be listened to. This work is not to eliminate resentment completely, because I love emotions. They are data. And when we use that as data and not directives and not something that we're always operating off of, but we use it as information, and our work is to get curious about that, to ask, how is this going to help me be the person that I want to be? How is addressing this going to build more self-trust, more honesty, more authenticity, more intentionality in my life? And then we turn that mirror towards ourselves instead of categorizing everybody else. And we try in the most vulnerable, imperfect, messy, embarrassing, awful way possible to start to say the true thing. And I promise you, it will get better. It takes practice. It's okay if it's uncomfortable. It's okay if you do it bad. I would even say, okay, I'm going to say this and it's going to be a big giant mess and I'm scared to tell you this, but there's something I want to talk to you about that's been bothering me. You don't have to overhaul every single situation and every single relationship tomorrow that you've been resentful about. You just start with those 3 questions, maybe make a plan how to make a gentle shift in one of them. Okay, that's it. If this episode hit close to home for you, and I have a feeling it did for a few of you, I would love to help you work through one of those resentful relationships. I would love for you to rate and review my podcast if you haven't yet. I would totally appreciate that. So it helps get this information out. Check my show notes for the link in my website to book a call with me. I would love to talk with you. Thank you so much. Let's let go of some of that resentment and get that weight off of our chest so we can create a better life. And I'll see you next time. Every week, you're learning something new here on this podcast, and that is a powerful first step. But guess what? Information alone doesn't create transformation. True change happens when you start to think differently and shift the nervous system patterns that drive your behavior. As a coach and an emotional resiliency expert, that is the work I do. I love to walk alongside you, whether it's one-on-one, in a small group that you choose, or with your workplace team. I can help you retrain your brain and nervous system so that stress no longer runs the show. You'll find ways to connect with me in the show notes. Let's do this work together.